Let's talk about this little camera, the ZV-1F, who it's for, and is it still worth buying? I recently bought this camera for $250 and I was wondering, because it's still selling in stores for $499. Is it still worth picking up, or are there better options out there? First, let's talk pros of this camera, and the first point I want to bring up is that it has webcam capabilities. That's just direct plug and play, and it definitely looks better than my 16-inch MacBook. The next thing I love about this camera is that it has picture profiles. It shoots in S-Log2 and in S-Log3. So if you like color grading your footage, you're gonna have a lot of fun with this little camera. Point number 3 is this camera actually shoots at decent frame rates. It shoots up to 4K 30 frames per second. I was often using it in 24 frames per second for the use case of this video, but I did get to try out the 120 frames per second on 1080p, and I thought that looked pretty decent as well. Really quick, if you're finding value in this video, it goes a really long way if you could just leave a like. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, and let's dive back in. Another thing that I really like about this camera, other than the price, is that it matches the menu system on my Sony a7 IV, which we're shooting on right now, and I think that's really helpful in terms of just finding things in the menu on the fly. It also has a fully articulating screen, so it's really good for vloggers, full flip function, and you can close it so that like the screen doesn't get damaged when you travel. Point number 5, Sony did a really good job with the onboard mic on this, and I'll show you a test here and what you can do with the onboard audio if you add just a little bit of bass and equalization as well. Okay, so this is vlogging with active stabilization turned on, and we're in full cinematic mode. I'm running into an issue right now with the ND filter. It doesn't have one on it, but the ZV-1 does. It also comes with a pretty nifty windscreen as well to cut noise when you are outside. Point number 6 is that Sony was actually considerate to the users when we asked for a wider field of view, so that was kind of cool to give a 20mm focal length, that's a full frame equivalent, out of this camera. The last 3 points that I'll bring up is that this camera actually has a 3.5mm headphone jack if you want to beef up your sound quality even more. It has no record limit, which is more than I can say about my much more expensive Sony a7 III, which shuts off after 30 minutes. So if I want to put this as a B cam, then I can, and just not worry about it so much in terms of like having to reset every 30 minutes. And lastly, this is kind of a silly one, but it takes pictures.
Oh boy, it's walkies time. This is the highlight of my day, week, heck, my whole existence. My human struggles with poop every time, but they mean well. We venture out, me dragging my butt, sniffing every scent and checking every hydrant. My human tries to lead the way, mumbling about where we're going. Little does he know that I'm the captain now. We encounter peacocks and other brain-dead humans. I just marvel at their antics. Heading home, I realize how much I prefer it out here, and do everything in my power to convince my owner to stay out in nature.
The video you just saw was shot solely on the ZV-1F, and you might be asking yourself who did the voiceover. Well, it wasn't me. I'm not a great impersonator. It was actually an AI tool from today's channel sponsor, Artlist. This has to be one of the coolest AI applications I've seen to date. It's ridiculously easy to use. Just go to the voiceover category on Artlist, browse through and find the voice that matches your project best. Type anything you want in the box, then generate, listen, and download. I then found a song on Artlist that matched the narration voice, and I had a final product that was indistinguishable from a voice actor. I've been having way too much fun with this new feature, and if you want to get 2 months free off an annual Artlist subscription, all you got to do is click the link in my description below. Thank you so much, Artlist, for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to the ZV-1F. So what are the flaws? The first one is you're going to want to be using active stabilization on this camera, but when you do, it crops in a little bit. So instead of that 20mm field of view, you're actually getting something closer to 25mm, which is actually not the best for vlogging. Point number 2 is that this camera can only shoot in JPEG, so it definitely wasn't designed for photographers or hybrid users, just for video. While we're talking about video, the autofocus does struggle at times, so I found it somewhat inconsistent, but for the most part, it's usable, and it is a pretty inexpensive camera. So if you wanted, you could just flip to manual focus as well. but that might be a little bit cumbersome to use on something this size. Point number 4 is we talked about active track stabilization on this camera, which crops in and you get like not the best field of view. If you don't want to use that and you want to get the 20mm field of view, you're going to have to use something called Catalyst Browse, which is Sony software just to stabilize the footage. And a lot of people don't want to be doing that because it's a workaround. It takes a really long time to actually like prep your footage for editing, and these things are meant to be just like run and gun shooting. You shouldn't have to do all this extra work. The next point is that I love that you can use this plug and play as a webcam, but it only shoots 720p, which is a little bit crippled considering this thing shoots 1080p and even 4K. So that you can only get like 720 without a capture card is a little bit upsetting. Point number 6, I didn't experience this too much, but a lot of people online are seeing a jiggle in the footage, or just kind of like some artifacts going on when you're using autofocus instead of manual focus. So if you are seeing this in your ZV-1F and this is becoming a problem, you might have to switch to manual focus, and that's annoying that that's even a thing. My last 2 points is that this thing doesn't support the best battery life. You're probably going to want to walk around with like 3 of these batteries if you're shooting video all day, which is what this is intended for. And lastly, I was running into, when I was trying to get cinematic settings, I was running into a lot of like overexposure issues, and that's because what they did is they took out the ND filter from the ZV-1 originally. They had a built-in ND filter on that, and that was one of my favorite features on that camera. So you had to like up the shutter speed on this, which you didn't get the natural motion blur. So it's not the best for people trying to get the best cinematic look. So who is this camera for? First off, definitely not for photographers because it can't shoot RAW. Secondly, if you're a hybrid user, it can shoot in JPEG, but honestly, I'd probably miss this one as well, and you could just get something like the ZV-1, which does shoot RAW. It's more of a hybrid camera, but both of those don't have EVFs as well. If you're a first-time vlogger and this is like your first upgrade from an iPhone, I would actually think that it's not a terrible choice for that. It would actually be really good if you have no idea how to use manual settings and you want to start color grading, but you don't know how to use picture profiles, S-Log2 and S-Log3, you don't know how to shoot it in camera, expose it properly, you don't know how to edit it in post. This would be like a really good camera to learn on for that. But for the majority of people who are wanting to buy this camera and just use it in automatic settings, I actually think you're better off to just use your iPhone. You're gonna get really good quality 4K, you're gonna get better frame rates for slow motion, and my iPhone 13 Pro even shoots in RAW. With that being said, I got it for $250 and I can use it as a B cam, and I can match my colors cinematically to my Sony a7 IV, and the menu systems are the same. So I actually think I'll be keeping it for a little bit. I just can't recommend it for people who want to use solely the auto features. If you're looking for a Sony camera that's similar in size and price, but you actually want it to do like better photos or use it as a hybrid camera, consider checking out this. Thanks so much for stopping by the channel. I appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video.